Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
Bat-like flying humanoid confronted in southern Illinois. I just read your article through a post on Facebook, and I'd like to report that my husband and I witnessed what we have called a human vampire bat thing for years. We live in Edwardsville, Illinois, and we're driving home from an event in St. Louis late one night. Unfortunately, I don't know the date, but believe it was a work Christmas party, so that time of year. It was some time after 1988 when we built our current house, and before 1996, before our son was born, we think. For sure after 1988, but it's possible our son was at a sitter. We were on Highway 270 between Illinois Route 157 and Illinois Route 159 in Glen Carbon, Illinois, traveling east. A human-sized thing flying west swooped down like it was going to crash into our windshield and then over the top of our car. It was all black with huge wings under a cape, and it did have a face similar to a human, and it seemed to look at us. It happened quickly. Neither of us could believe our eyes and didn't see where it went from there. We slowed down and looked in our rear-view mirrors, but never saw it again. Of course, no one believed us. Then a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4, I saw an article about human-sized bats in the Philippines that really did look like what we saw. So much we don't know about this big crazy world in which we live. LS.
Large bat-like humanoid threatens family at San Jose, California cemetery. I read your article on the flying bat, man-like creature at the Chicago Adler Planetarium. I have an account that took place in 1989. In the summer of 1987, my mother passed away from cancer, leaving behind 2 sons and a husband, my father. Every Sunday my father would take me and my brother to breakfast, and then we would visit Mom at her grave site, located at Alum Rock in San Jose, California, Calvary Catholic Cemetery. We would go to breakfast early mid-morning or early morning, around 8 a.m. or so. This particular day was no different, and we arrived at the cemetery at approximately 11 a.m., and it was a cloudless sunny day. We had just walked up to the grave and had a brief moment to get in a comfortable standing position. Out of the corner of my eye, I seen something black perched on a tree branch. It seemed to be facing us, however the shape of it was without definition. The best description I can give is that it was in the form of a black humanoid bat shape. I could see the form of what looked like a head on shoulders and having wings rising above the shoulders. The bottom part of the creature was much slimmer, with the rest of the body giving the impression of legs standing upright on the tree branch. But it was without definition, appearing as if a person used a black permanent marker and drew its shape. I hope that makes sense. As soon as I looked at it, the creature did a nosedive out of the tree with its wings spread out. It then straightened its body, doing a 90-degree upward turn, tucked in its wings and beelined straight towards us. It didn't flap its wings when it flew towards us, similar to the Mothman accounts that seemed to cut through the air. I've read about bees and beetles sending a vibration through its wings and allowing a different type of flight. As the creature flew towards us, it curved slightly and flew between me and my father, and seemed to target my older brother. I say this because he had to turn his shoulders and just managed dodging the creature from hitting him in the chest by a hair. The creature flew past him, made a quick right flying between tombstones, and was out of our sight. I was extremely terrified, and my dad and brother laughed it off. After asking my father several times what it was, he finally said it was the Diablo, Spanish for devil. I stopped asking after that. Every now and then I'll do periodic Google searches of the cemetery to see if there have been any accounts of people seeing the same thing, but not at this site. I have attached a picture at the bottom of this email that I found on the internet that looks the exact same, except what we seen that day did not have red eyes. It is the same species creature that we seen. To my knowledge, the tree branch was not very high off the ground, and the distance between the tree and where we stood, I estimate the creature to have flown at about 230 to 250 miles per hour. This account is true as I remember it, and my brother could also give his account as well. I also know of a very interesting account of another flying humanoid witnessed by a handful of kids, grown adults now, that witnessed a flying humanoid of a different nature. This was also witnessed in the daytime, and I could put you in touch with them if you are interested. Growing up in the Evergreen area of San Jose during the 80s and 90s, I experienced a ton of other inexplicable events, as well as my neighborhood friends. I find these events very bizarre, and believe there is a good chance that the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, located a few miles away, could have influenced some type of reality portal. The area was not as eventful or scary as some of the Skinwalker Ranch accounts, but definitely in the same category. I grew up with about 20 neighborhood kids, and I'm sure they would be willing to give you a lot of their accounts. I look forward to hearing back from you in the near future. MS.
Possible flying humanoid observed over Las Vegas, Nevada. So I am mainly wondering what I could have seen. As far as I know, there are no cryptid legends or any kind of stories from around here. I know Nevada and Arizona are fairly known for their paranormal activity. Usually it's alien sightings or those ghost tours they have around town. I will start by giving some background of the area in Las Vegas. I used to live on Gilmore and Cliff Shadows, basically where Cheyenne meets the 215. There is a small mountain range that was basically my backyard. It's a suburban area, stucco houses crammed so closely together. It was less than a 5-minute walk from my front door to the base of Cheyenne Mountain. I used to run up the ridge to the peak as exercise. I have since moved from the area. This was around October of 2017. My fiancé and I loved sitting in our backyard and enjoy the scenery. We had seen some weird unexplainable stuff on the top of the mountain. Once we were watching what we thought was a hiker before he ran towards the edge of a cliff and seemingly flew off the edge. This kind of stuff was the other half of why we loved sitting in our backyard and just watching the mountain and observing the sky. Back to the story. With all the strangeness, this by far was the most unexpected and unexplainable. One night, around 10 p.m. 12 a.m. we were up late and felt like lying out back and stargazing. We dragged the dog's bed outside and threw a few blankets on top so we could lay on it. It was always windy. We lived at the base of a mountain, so this was a part of life. We also had a flood wash behind our house, with a little running trail that made our yard even more windy. As we watched the clouds pass under the stars, something large and humanoid glided over us. It looked like a man with wings. It did not flap, just glided over silently. I am not sure of the altitude, but it looked like it was at about the height of the mountain peak, below the clouds, gliding above our house, south and parallel to the mountain ridge. It was silhouetted against the clouds. The city lights barely illuminated it, but I could clearly make out the shape of a man with wings. My original thought was a hang glider, but it was super late at night, and as far as I know, you don't just jump off of random mountains to do this. There are designated flying zones, and you have to log quite a bit of flight hours to be able to fly alone. I also thought vampire gargoyle, but again I have not heard any legends or stories from this area. I have done a bit of research and my new thought is that someone may have released a flying fox. I looked up videos of them flying and they seemed smaller than what I saw, but maybe someone had one that got too big, and they let it loose. I have had friends that have exotic pet birds, cats, or monkeys, so I could see this happening. They seem like they need to flop a lot though, but I guess if it were higher up it would not need to so much. It had such a smooth straight flight path that gives me doubts. This still seems like the most reasonable explanation. UG.
Flying humanoid observed in Austin, Texas. A couple of months back, me and one of my older cousins were standing outside of my house. He was having a cigarette. I'm not a smoker, but was always reluctantly called outside every smoke break. It was about 9 p.m., and being 4 cigarette breaks and we pretty much ran out of things to talk about. I opted for just looking into the night sky and gazing for the Big Dipper, it being the only star I could typically spot right away. As I'm looking up I notice a dark silhouette literally about 10 feet from the top of my house. I live in a 2-story home, so 10 feet from my roof is pretty high up, but yet still close enough for me to still see. I could vividly see that it was the shape of a person flying from above my home and over across the street and out of sight. It moved smoothly across the sky, not too fast, just at a glide. I stared in disbelief, unable to speak. Long after it vanished behind my neighbor's home, I still looked in its direction, trying to understand what just happened. When I finally was able to gather my thoughts enough to talk, I turned to my cousin who was also looking into the sky and said, "Let's go inside." He put out his cigarette, and we both walked into the house and sat in silence for about 5 minutes. The silence was broken by the sound of my cousin taking in a deep breath before asking me, "Did you see something flying outside?" Before he could finish, I burst out into rapid sentences about what I saw. Before I knew it, we were both going back and forward, barely letting either get a word out. We decided that what we saw was real, and it really did happen. That's not the most terrifying part though. A few weeks later, after my mind had finally calmed down a little, I stumbled across a TV show on Destination America entitled Monsters and Mysteries, I believe. The second episode one watch turned out to be based on sightings in Austin, Texas. I couldn't believe it. The episode was about flying humanoids being spotted in here in the city. It confirmed for me that what I saw was actually real, and I hadn't been one of the only ones who spotted it. Rather you believe me or not, do some research or laugh it up and accuse me of being on drugs or watching too much Jeepers Creepers. I honestly don't care if you believe me or not. I still look to the sky on most nights. I know there's still out there. ZL.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.